Good morning. I'm Ann Bisogno, CEO of Xantreon, the host for your live demonstration today. Andreas is with the Crancer Group, and he'll actually be leading the demonstration. The Crancer Group has very close ties with Microsoft, and so they are very well versed in the technology we're going to be walking through today. But mostly I just want to welcome you and say, this is expected to be a very hands-on and interactive session, so don't hold back on questions. We're going to ask you a few too, and I just want you to sit back and enjoy and see what it's like for yourself to use some of the latest security and work from home technologies. We're putting this demonstration on because a lot of our clients have come forward to us in the new year and said, hey, yeah, we survived 2020 by implementing some quick work from home solutions. But this year, a lot of people are kind of stepping back and really taking a look at what they've done to make sure it's going to hold them for the longer term, since the impacts of the pandemic appear to be with us for a bit longer. So let's go ahead and start it up, and I hope you enjoy what you see.
Absolutely. And actually on that point, Anna, I do want to dig into that a little bit more. I'll tell you one of the things that has been, I don't want to say trending, but it's been a topic of discussion for a lot of organizations. It's not only just been, okay, this adjustment to working from home, it was hard for a lot of organizations. Maybe, yeah, they've kind of managed, they figured it out. But a lot of companies are deciding, they're realizing, wait a second, I can be just as effective, just as productive, and I don't have to pay for an office. I mean, there is a lot of considerations. I'm not saying that's something you want to do, but I'm just saying there's a lot of businesses who are making that decision right now. And so, being able to work remotely has become more important than ever before. And so that's why I'm really excited to show you some of the tools here inside of the Microsoft 365 suite that are specifically designed for that. Before we get started, though, one of the things that I'm going to be doing during the call today is using polling, because I think it's a good understanding to, get a good feedback from the group here. First off, I want to just find out, where do we stand with Teams? I'm going to go ahead and send this out. You'll see it here inside of your Teams window. I'm curious, are you an expert in Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, all of the different tools inside of M365? Are you a novice? Are you absolutely brand new? Let me know. I'm going to be able to use this to really understand, where I might want to be taking this specific lab. Looks like I just got a response. Okay, one of us here is a novice who may have seen them. Okay, another novice here. We got two novices. Okay, great. So hopefully that means, okay, somebody's brand new. Awesome. So that's even more exciting for me, because then this is going to be a really, really good understanding of how you're going to be able to, really get a good taste here for Teams as well as the entire M365 suite. So, first thing I want to just quickly start with is just a little blurb on security, because this is always a question I get just all the time when it comes to being able to work remotely like this, accessing things in the cloud and things of that nature. Microsoft 365 security is, top of the line security in the industry. It's well known for being extremely effective. And what's great about it is that it's extended across all the different devices, applications, and tools that you're going to be using inside of your IT. And so, the reason I'm mentioning that, I'll give you some figures here. Microsoft invests over $1 billion every single year on research and development for security. Did you know they've got over 3,500 professionals specifically dedicated just for security? One other thing that I can mention that I think is really cool is Microsoft security really works like a big brain. And the reason I say that is, Microsoft has customers all over the country, all over the world. And what's really cool about the way that they operate is they work, again, like this big brain, so that let's say somebody in Florida has some kind of issue where they interact a brand new type of, bad actor. We're going to take the learnings from that as Microsoft, understand how to combat that, and then send out those updates to everybody who's got, our specific applications. And so this is a side note, but just something for everybody to be, abreast of. If you get an update, it's a best practice. Do it right away within 24 hours. There could be some serious, security issues that you could potentially run into if you don't. The updates are there as a way to continually improve, continually get better when it comes to security. And so we're going to be looking into that. here when we get into the different applications that are part of this M365 suite. Just wanted to start with there so that you got to understand, you are partnering with one of the premier security partners here inside of the industry. And so I just wanted to level set there. But when it comes to collaboration, when it comes to working from home and having access to all these different tools, you're going to have access to the entire Office 3 or Microsoft 365 suite. Before we actually jump into Teams, I want all of us to actually open it up so that you can see the flexibility, number one. So you'll see, right, we've got our desktop application. That's one of the primary ways we're going to be able to access Teams, for example, in this case. We've got a phone application, right? So I have Teams on this device. I have Outlook on this device. I've got other things, right, that have to do with that M365 suite. So now we got multiple ways. We've got the desktop application on my computer. I've got the applications on my phone. But one of the most effective ways, in my personal opinion, let's say you're working on a different device from a different location, is actually being able to access all of this directly from the web. And so I want everybody to go ahead and follow along with me here today so that we can make sure we sign in and so that you can see really the full breadth of what you can do here inside of Microsoft 365. So you see this Edge browser. Go ahead and open this up. Okay. When you open this up, you'll notice it says, welcome to the new Microsoft Edge, a fast, safe, and productive web browser that works for you. It'll take just a second here to load up. All I want you to do is just make sure that you sign in here to the browser. You see where it says complete setup? Make sure you click on that. Make sure you confirm. Okay, because now you'll notice you now have a face icon here in the top right of the browser. Reason this is relevant is it's now going to make sure that we're actually signed in to our Office account here inside of the browser. So if I go ahead and open up a new tab for me, just like I'm doing here, I want you all to navigate to office.com. So I'm going to go ahead and type in office.com, then press enter.
And of course, if any of you are having trouble with any of these steps, please raise your hand electronically or say something, and we will get you all fixed up.
Absolutely.
You don't need to be shy. We know you're all new to this, so we're happy to help walk you through it.
Yeah, this is a great tool here, again, for accessing this. I understand if you've never done this before, it could be complicated. So please, like I said, and like Ann was saying, please let us know. But you notice I signed in here. I'm going to just click on the X because I don't need a little tour just yet. But what's beautiful about this is, again, now we have 3 distinct ways to access our information in a secure way. What you'll notice is I now have access to all of my Teams application here on the web, my SharePoint, my OneNote, my OneDrive, and my Outlook. We'll be getting into that in just a second, but I first just kind of wanted to set the stage. This is the flexibility, this is the power of the Microsoft 365 suite, the ability to be able to access this from a variety of different ways. Like I mentioned, we'll be getting back in here in just a second, but for now, you can go ahead and just minimize the browser. I wanted to quickly jump into Teams first because I think this is fundamentally, especially if you're starting this transition to working from home. This is going to be something that you're definitely going to want to, understand how to leverage effectively. When you're launching Teams, what you'll notice is that Teams is really going to give you the ability to manage a variety of different tools inside of your environment. If I just quickly, as this loads up, you can see, I'll go ahead and make sure this gets ready. A lot of the different capabilities here. I'm going to quickly zoom, though, just to make it easier for everybody to see. Okay. The main purpose of today in terms of what I want to get through in Teams is I primarily want to focus on the chat. I want to focus on the Teams element as well as the calling. Primarily what I will say is that Teams is meant to be your modern desktop. Okay, that's the goal of the application. The reason I say that is that the vision behind Teams was to create a way where you can have a lot of the different functions that you might use on your daily basis, all integrated in one specific application. Right, so for example, we've got a chat function here inside of Teams. directly inside this application. On top of that, we've got a location where we can store and manage our different documents and files. We've got a calendar section where I can look at the different calendar and my schedule for the rest of the day. And on top of that, I'm also going to have the ability to make outbound calls if I wanted to enable that here inside of my Teams environment. So again, we're going to have the capabilities of a lot of different tools directly here inside of this one application. And that's really where I think the power of Teams comes into play when you realize how many different tools and abilities you're going to have inside of one application. First thing I'll just quickly cover, a lot of people give me questions about, this little green check mark. This is what we call an availability notification. What I think is super, super relevant here is especially if we're all working remotely, right? Let's say me and Andrew wanted to collaborate on something. What's great about Teams is I'm going to be able to know, okay, Andrew is a green check mark. He's available. That means he's on Teams and he's not on a meeting. So I should theoretically be able to reach out to Andrew and get a hold of him. Or maybe it tells me he's busy or do not disturb, which means, you know what, he's actually on a call right now, he's in a meeting, or he's presenting. So it's not going to be a good way to a good time, I should say, to go ahead and reach out. Or, he's just completely off of the application. Right, so it's going to give you a really good understanding of where you currently stand with your teammates, what different things you might want to take into account in terms of timing and when they're available. Just an incredible tool for that specific purpose. So wanted to quickly explain that because I think that's one of the coolest features here inside of Teams. You've obviously got your activity section. I don't want to spend too much time here, but ultimately, important thing to note here is that anytime there's any kind of activity in your team that pertains to you, for example, right, in this case, Lydia gave me a heart on my message. Or Diego right here, he gave me an @ directly to me. He mentioned me directly. Or Miriam reacted again to my message. Anything that pertains to you here inside of Teams, you're going to get an activity notification for it. And so, I keep it pretty simple, not too complicated. But the primary thing I try and let people know here is that you definitely want to make sure first thing you do every time, check your activity, make sure you didn't miss anything, and then continue to go ahead and get your work done here inside of Teams. Okay. What I did want to spend a little bit of time on was the chat function, because I think this is really one of the most impressive things that you can do here inside of Teams. Microsoft specifically likes to frame this as the new communication experience. Okay. Essentially what they're doing here is they want to provide you a way to be able to communicate and collaborate with your teammates as effectively as possible and give you a lot of options on that front. Chat has a variety of different things that you can do. I'm going to walk through some of my favorites here. But the first thing I want to make sure we can do is make sure that anybody who doesn't fully understand how to do this understands how to use chat. Okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and ask everybody to send me a specific chat message. Okay, so the way that you're going to do that is you're going to go ahead and click on this square with a pencil icon. When you click on that, you notice this says enter a name, enter an email, enter a group, or enter a tag. All you're going to need to do is type in my name. In this case, my name is Megan Bowen. Okay, but let's say, for example, I wanted to reach out to Grady Archie. All I'd have to do is type in Grady and say hello. Okay. In this case, I want all of you who have access to the remote session, please go ahead and get into that remote desktop, get into your Teams environment, go ahead and open up the chat. I want you guys to send me a message. The reason being, number one, I want you guys to practice it. But number two, I also want to create a group chat with everybody who sends me a message so that I can show you one of the best ways to collaborate on documents that you're going to be hosting here inside of Teams or inside of SharePoint. So if anybody's having any issues with that, please let me know. Again, when you're here inside of the remote session, inside of chat, you're going to go ahead and click on this square with a pencil. When you click on that, you're going to type in my name. Again, my name is Megan Bowen. And then just go ahead and send me hello. Just want to make sure you guys understand how to do that. Brian, are you having any issues with that? Let's see. I know who else was able to get into the environment. There's Miriam. There's Nestor. Awesome. Looks like everybody's pouring in. Got a couple more here. Kirby, Dana, having any issues with that I can help you with?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, Dana's good. Awesome. I see Mark is on video. I appreciate it, Mark. Sometimes it's, scary to be the only one here on video, so I appreciate it, man. Thanks for jumping on. All right. Anybody else able to send me a message? I want to make sure you guys can do this. Mark, were you able to send this message by any chance in the remote session? I have Miriam. I have Nestor.
Are you asking, can I see messages? Yeah, I can see messages.
Great. So, if you guys are following on, that's totally fine as well. I'm glad I got a couple people here to send me a message. This is the simple, first step here inside of chat. What I will say, the reason I think chat is so relevant and why I really want to share it with you is I personally think people use email for way too much. Okay, I'm not sure if that's your organization, but that is a lot of organizations out there. And I think chat really gives you an ability to segment different types of communications, right? I typically recommend let's use chat for informal things. Let's use chat for group messages. Let's use chat to really easily get an answer because I know, again, whether or not my teammate's actually on the app, right? It's really easy to know whether or not they're going to be able to see it. Um, Inside of email, I'm going to keep that for long form, very formal messages, right? But if you really commit here, you guys, we're going to be able to navigate the majority of our communication here inside of chat. It's an easier thing to work from. It's an easier feature to communicate on, and it's just going to make your life a lot easier. If you don't like getting a million emails, this is definitely going to be a benefit for you. I see Patty just sent me a message. Awesome. Now we're going to have 4 people in our group chat. Perfect number. All right. So this is one-to-one communication, pretty simple. She gives me a message, I can give her a thumbs up, relatively easy to work from, right? But what are some different tools that you can do in here? I'm going to create a group chat. Okay, I'm going to add Miriam, I'm going to add Nestor, and I'm going to add Patty. Okay. What's important here is I go ahead and I'll send a message. Miriam, Nestor, and Patty, go ahead and feel free to send me a message. Say hello, how are you doing? Give me a thumbs up. Send me an emoji, a GIF, whatever you like. What's important here is now we have a forum as a group to communicate from, okay? We don't have to send all of our communication through email. I'm already working on Teams, let's say, so I want to be able to communicate directly from my workspace, and that's where chat really becomes so powerful. What I will recommend, though, anytime you have a group chat, it's very easy to, I don't want to say get confused, but to have multiple group chats, let's say, with both Miriam and Nestor and then somebody else, or Patty and Nestor and somebody else, Patty and Miriam, somebody else. So what I always recommend is whenever you're creating group chats, give them a name, okay? In this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on this little pencil to give this a name. I'm going to call us the Dream Team. And then I'm going to go ahead and save it, okay? So now what you'll notice is that this name appears here towards the top. It also appears here on the left-hand side. It's going to be easier for you to manage and understand what your different group chats are and what would make the most sense in terms of communicating with a certain individual. So highly recommend naming them. I just think that's a good best practice. Additionally, one thing that I have noticed inside of Teams, if you have a lot of messages consistently, which is I think where we want to head to, you'll notice Isaiah was actually the first person to ever send me a message, and yet they're all the way to the bottom now because I've had recent messages that pushed it down. And so I got annoyed trying to find my specific group chats, when I get into chat. So what I did is I said, you know what, let me just make this as easy as possible. So if you hover over a chat, okay, this is a really cool feature I want you guys to take a look at. There's these 3 dots that appear called an ellipses. If I click on that ellipses, I can go ahead and pin this. Okay, so now when I pin it, I'm going to have direct access to this group chat directly at the top of this piece of the application. So let's say I was in the calendar, I was looking at my next meeting, when I'm going to get ready, and then I got a message. I said, okay, let me go get to that group chat. Go to the chat, right away at the top, easy for me to find. So my personal recommendation, if you have a few group chats or a few chat messages with a certain person that are very important to you, I would definitely recommend giving it a name and pinning it here towards the top. Any questions on that so far, you guys? Very big piece of Teams. Okay. No worries. So, we talked about the first fundamental pieces. Okay, I want to send a message back and forth, the basics here inside of chat. But what are some other functions? I'm going to go through 3 things that I think are very relevant, something that you might be using in your daily, workflow. Number 1, do I ever need to send some kind of document? Okay, I'll tell you, one of the concerns with email is that there's a certain size requirement that you can't go over for documents. So one of the cool things, You see, we just got a GIF. One of the cool things that you're going to be able to do here inside of Teams is send documents. So I can attach a document, let's say right here from my computer. Go ahead and choose one, and go ahead and send this press release. Open it and send it. The one thing I will, word of caution here is understanding that, Teams is built, it's an extension of SharePoint is probably the best way to explain it. It's built on top of SharePoint. And so what's important and relevant for you to understand there is that this is built on the web. So every specific file that you're creating and managing and making changes to is going to have a specific address tied to it. So that every time you're making changes, it's automatically saving it. Automatically, okay? So if I click on this press release, for example, and I start making edits, right, and I say, hey, Patty, let's go ahead and let's communicate and collaborate on this press release together. If we start making all of these edits, right, and we go ahead and make these changes, and I exit out of Teams, that new version of that document is going to be directly here inside of the chat. And so the reason I'm bringing this up and why I wanted to highlight this is that if you're ever going to be collaborating on a document with somebody else, you're going to be working on it, best way to do this is to just send links. Because now wherever that document is stored and organized, we know that the work is going to get completed right there. So that's just a recommendation. Personally, I'll show you how to do that later on in the lab today. That you can send documents though, keep that in mind. Another really cool tool, right here, you notice there's a little calendar icon. If I click on this, what's beautiful is it actually creates a brand new meeting invitation, right? So let's just say I want to just do a test meeting. But what's even more cool is you'll notice that everybody who was a part of this group chat was automatically added to that meeting. So now, not only can I send information inside of those chats, I can actually schedule meetings directly from that chat, and everybody who's a part of that group chat is going to get automatically added to that invitation, right? Now go ahead and I'll add this here to one of the channels that we're going to be working on. Let's just do, for example, Contoso Marketing. I'll go ahead and put general. I'll explain what I'm doing here later today, but what I'm doing is I'm actually sending this invitation inside of a channel as well. Again, I'll show you what this is in just a second. This may not make sense to you right now. But ultimately, this is a really cool tool here. Again, I'm doing this all from chat. If I go ahead and I send this and check on my calendar so you can see, this is actually getting directly scheduled from chat. Really, really, really cool tool. I use it relatively often, so I do recommend taking a look at what you're able to do there. So we talked about one-to-one communication. We talked about communicating in group chats. We talked about sending documents, scheduling meetings. And yet, I don't think that's one of the coolest things that we can do with chat. My personal opinion, best thing that we can actually do with chat is get direct access to calling somebody. Because a lot of times, we want to make it a seamless process to get somebody on the phone. Let's say I've been communicating here with the dream team for an extended period of time. We've been going back and forth, right? And now we kind of decide, you know what? We just need to jump on a call, okay? So instead of actually, calling them on the side and figuring out where their number is, all I have to do is actually make that call directly from the group chat. You notice in the top right, we have this calling feature. I can go ahead and click on this. And, everybody who's in the group chat, if you could actually pick up that call, what you'll notice is that it's actually calling the people in that group chat to basically have an online meeting with them right away. I don't have to go scheduling it on the books. I don't have to go, make things happen that way. You notice Miriam just picked up. I'm also calling, somebody else just picked up as well. And then I'm still calling that third person, right? So we have Nestor and Miriam who picked up. We could now get on a regular meeting, just like the meeting that we have today, right? Right now where I'm sharing my screen, where I'm sharing my video, my audio, I'm recording it. All of those capabilities are going to be built into that calling feature directly inside of chat. So again, when we're talking about our new communication experience, we're not playing around. This is going to give you a bunch of different capabilities, and I think it's really valuable to understand what's possible and how you can leverage it. I know I just went through a million things, and if you'd like to add anything else, Christian, please, feel free. Is there any questions on what I covered so far, you guys? I want to make sure I can answer anything.
So the one thing I guess I'll point out, we've been using Teams within Xantrion for a couple of years now, but what he's demonstrating that sometimes is hard to wrap your head around until you do it yourself for a couple of weeks is that you're saving so much time by not jumping between applications or even your phone versus what's happening on your computer. The fact that I can kind of do the vast majority of my daily tasks just by logging into Teams and then using its various features saves me so much time. This is the power of Teams, and this is why it's called the hub for teamwork.
Absolutely. Great point, Ann. Any other questions, you guys? I want to make sure, if you have anything that doesn't make sense, we're here to answer. But if not, totally understand. I'll give you guys a second in case you have anything. Feel free, you got the raise your hand feature, you got the chat, you got the audio, whatever makes the most sense to you. Okay, no worries. I'm going to go ahead and put out another poll for everybody here. Because the next section we're actually going to get into is actually the file storage capabilities here in Teams. So I'm going to send out a poll. I'm curious, currently right now inside your organization, how are you managing this? Do you have everything in SharePoint right now? Do you have everything in your OneDrive? Are you already using Teams for file storage capabilities? Do you have your on-premises file server? Are you using the cloud? There's a lot of different options here. Just kind of curious what everybody is using here today. We're going to be talking specifically about the relationship of doing this inside of Teams and how that works. From the responses so far, it looks like we have kind of a mix here. Seems like SharePoint is definitely a big piece of what we're going to do, so I'm excited we can jump into that a little bit later on today. But awesome. Okay, so we're kind of across the board. So if I get here into the Teams portion, just so you can kind of see what this looks like, let me give you a quick little understanding of this structure first. Okay, I think that's relevant for you guys to understand. Number one, the way that this is structured is you have teams, and within those teams, you have subsets called channels. Okay, so let's say, for example, one of the ways that I recommend doing this, especially if you have a larger organization, is creating teams for each individual department. And then, depending on their specific initiatives, you can create channels underneath that department that are going to be their own workspaces. But again, the access to those workspaces is going to be tied to that team. That's where security lies inside of Teams. It's all on the identity and access level. We want to make sure that only people who are invited are going to be accessible, are going to be able to access that team. But on top of that, people who are not invited are not even going to be able to see that it exists, right? And there's additional, security tools that we can put in place, such as, private channels that I'll touch on here in just a second as well. So you got a lot of different options, but what I will say here is that these channels and these teams are structured this way to be the modern file storage platform. The reason for that, Ann got into that a little bit earlier, is the ability to have access to all of your information from where you're doing the majority of your work. Again, right, if we're using Teams, I don't want to say correctly, but if we're using Teams to the fullest extent, you're going to quickly realize that you can do the vast majority of your work all from Teams. It's that expansive. There's that many tools. And so the reason that's relevant is if we can actually have access to our data and our documents as well inside of this platform, it's just going to make things run a lot more smoothly. It's going to be quicker and more efficient to work and get things done. Again, though, Teams is an extension of SharePoint. So if you put something in Teams, you're also going to be able to access that inside of SharePoint, not necessarily the other way around. And so that's important for you to understand, because if you're only going to be using SharePoint, if you're committed to just doing that, you can do that, and that's totally fine. Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to how you want to do your work. I get a lot of questions about that in terms of how I should set it up. But really, like I mentioned, I think Ann would love to sit down with you and kind of walk through how you do your business, because it's not a one-size-fits-all, you guys. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to set this up. It's going to come down to your needs and really matching these capabilities with the needs of your specific organization. So that's the structure. Okay, let's kind of get a little bit more understanding of the security features here. Okay, so number one, I was talking about, it's all about getting access. So for example, if we're here in the Contoso marketing team, if I look here, I can go ahead and see manage my team and see how many members I have. So if I look at my members and guests, you notice everybody who's invited here has been directly invited here to this team. Okay, so these 19 different guests are all going to have access to this general channel. Okay, this general channel is going to be automatically created anytime you create a team. And again, because they have access to this, they're going to also have access to the general channel. However, let's say you wanted to break this down a little further. Maybe you have the marketing team here for Contoso, but inside of that marketing team, you only wanted the 2 or 3 people involved at the very top, the leadership, to have access to some more crucial information. The way that you're going to be able to do that is by leveraging what are called private channels. So I'll just quickly show you how you can do that. And please feel free to follow along if you're up to it. So if you hover over Contoso Marketing or any team here inside of Microsoft Teams, you notice there's going to be an ellipses, right? This ellipses is going to give you the options to make any kind of changes to that team. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Channel. Okay. When I add the channel, I'm going to give it a name. Let's just say this is just the test. Okay. I can give a description if I like, but what you'll notice is there is privacy settings that I can enable, right? You'll notice there's a standard setting and there's a private setting. If it's standard, again, everybody who's been invited to that team is going to be able to access the channel. They're going to be able to see that the channel exists. However, there is this private channel opportunity where if I want to, again, make it even more granular, even if they're invited to the team, they're not going to be able to see that the channel exists, and they're not going to be able to get access to that channel. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you that. I'm going to create a private channel. I'm going to click Next. And then I'm going to add just a couple people. Let's say I'll add Nestor here. I'll add Patty because she's the president. And then let's say I'll go ahead and add Diego because I know he's in HR. So I'll go ahead and add him, and I'll press Add. If you wanted to give them the options to actually change certain settings, I can go ahead and make them, owners of the team. You're either an owner or you're a member. All that has to do is rights to make changes to the actual team settings. But in this case, the key here is that I'm creating this private channel and I'm only inviting these 3 people. So when I'm done here, what you'll be able to see is that inside of Contoso Marketing, you're going to have a general and you're going to have a test. What's awesome is that if you haven't been here in the test directly invited, you're only going to see Contoso Marketing with general. You're not going to see that test even exists. So again, it's all based on direct invitations. It's all based on identity in terms of security here inside a team. So just wanted to make that clear. These are all separate workspaces, and these private channels are actually a really useful tool when it comes to working here inside of Teams. Any questions on that so far, you guys? Okay, so not a problem. We came here though to really understand if we're working here inside of the files and using this as a document storage hub, how are we going to be able to work and collaborate and share, file information inside of Teams, and how is that going to compare to doing it inside of SharePoint? So let me just show you. I'm going to go ahead and create a new document here, but actually, let me take a step back. You're going to have a few options here for how you want to manage what's accessible inside of Teams. Okay, I'm going to be able to upload whatever documents directly here to this team channel and upload them manually like that. I can sync this with my OneDrive if I want to add all the information in my OneDrive to this channel. Or I could also click on this Add Cloud Storage icon, right? I can create basically an entry point to my SharePoint, to my Dropbox, to my share file, Google Drive, whatever you're using. If you want to basically create a folder here inside your file section where you'd be able to access those documents from Teams, you can do that as well. Like I mentioned, and you'll probably hear me say this multiple times, is going to come down to how you want to organize your environment. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and just create a brand new Word document myself. But actually, I just realized, I almost caught myself. I'm here in the test channel. So if I would have done this, you guys wouldn't have been able to get access to it. So I'm glad I noticed that. I'm going to do this in the general channel because now everybody will have access. I'm going to go to Files, and then I'm going to click on New. I'm going to click on a new Word document. I always do this because I think it's kind of fun. I'm going to create a potluck list. I'd love for you guys to join me here in collaborating on this document so that you can see some of those capabilities. I'm going to go ahead and create this. And then I'm going to list this 1 to 5. Okay, the reason for that is because, if you have an idea of what you want to bring to the potluck, you can go ahead and type that in here. But this is where the linking comes into play with documents. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this really quickly. Let's say I wanted to collaborate with my Dream Team group chat, okay? I could download this document and I could send that full document into chat. But what I think is the more logical, effective way to do this is, again, through sending links, because now you know, okay, this document is structured, it's safe, I know it's right here in this file section, so when I make those edits and I make those changes, I can refer right back to this location. I'm going to hover over this, click on this ellipses, and I'm going to copy this link, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and come here into the group chat, and I'm going to send this link. And then I'm going to say, help me edit, exclamation point. And I'm going to go ahead and make this a super important message and send that over. So I know we had a couple of people in here. If I look to see who's in this team, I have Miriam in the team. I have Nestor here. I have Patty here. It seems like you three are the ones that are here inside of this environment. If you guys could go ahead and click on that link for me, it'll take you directly to that page that I actually created for this potluck list. The reason I'd like for you guys to join me is so that everybody can see, the capabilities that you have. Okay, perfect. Miriam is in here. Great. She's going to be bringing meatloaf. I love it. Miriam, if you go to number 2 and start typing for everybody, I want everyone to be able to see, the real-time editing capabilities, the real-time collaboration. So you notice as she starts typing, I'm going to be able to see all those edits real time. She's going to be able to make those edits. Nestor just got in here. Nestor, let's see if you want to go ahead and start typing something in here. Looks like Miriam's bringing meatloaf and mashed potatoes. I'll go ahead and type into 5. I will bring some mac and cheese. Obviously, this is all fun and games, right? But the point is, this is real-time collaboration. This is where the industry is headed, especially if all of us are going to be working remotely. Reason for that, right? I'm going to be able to see, okay, I have Nestor in here with me. I have Miriam here with me. I can go ahead, I'll jump on a call with them. I'll start chatting with them so that we can communicate as we're working on this document. Or maybe I just want to work on this at different times. And what's really cool about this is every time I make those edits, I'm not going to have to worry about, downloading that document, sending it over the email. They can download that document back and then go ahead and send me that information back. That's just an old way of doing things here. We're going to want to be able to collaborate here inside of Teams or inside of SharePoint in a way that's just a little bit more effective. It's easier. It's more efficient way to communicate and collaborate. However, I did want to show you a couple things. I always get questions. Okay, what if, I have Nestor and I have Miriam in here, but I'm worried about some kind of edits that they're going to be making in the document. What I'm going to be able to do is click on this review button. Okay, when I click on this review button and I click on track changes and I turn it on for everyone, what you'll notice now, if Nestor or Miriam, if you want to start typing again for everybody here, what you're going to be able to see now is as they type, any edits that they make are going to automatically be basically flagged. You can almost think about it. So you see right here as Miriam's typing, she's typing in salad. As she types that in, it's now underlined. It's basically showing that this edit was made, but the edit was not necessarily saved to the document. In order for that to actually become a part of the document, I'm going to be able to hover over it and then go ahead and accept that specific change. Okay? Because now that I've tracked it, I like it, I can go ahead and accept it. That's going to be one of the ways that you can do this. Another way is actually managing, who can actually edit the document. I get questions about this all the time as well. Can I lock it down to certain people? Can I make it so that only certain people can edit? You can, and this is actually a good transition. That's all going to be done through SharePoint. Okay, so we saw what we can do here for collaboration inside of Teams. I want to go ahead and make that transition to SharePoint now so that we can talk about actually collaborating and sharing files internally and externally.
Hey,
So,
Andreas, before
yeah.
you move over, can I just make a point here?
Yes, absolutely.
So for those of you who are new to co-editing documents together, I just want to say how productive this is.
Yeah.
We get work done so much faster because of this feature, regardless of the kind of project we're working on or the document we're using to do it. And even before everybody was working from home, this feature was really powerful for our firm. But of course, at this point, now that people are home and we never see each other, this is kind of the only way to collaborate, not only quickly, but effectively because of the track changes and the accept changes type of features in this capability.
Absolutely. I'm glad you really brought that one home, Ann, because I think this is just more efficient. It's faster. It's easier. It's a much more clean way of communicating and collaborating. I think it's really something, if you don't have capabilities to do this right now currently, it can really fundamentally change the way that you get things done as an organization. So definitely want to highlight that point because it's a really cool feature here inside of Teams. But like I was mentioning, we're able to do this through Teams, but we're also able to do this through SharePoint. So I'm going to transition here from my Teams environment. If you remember at the very beginning, I asked you guys to open up an Edge browser. Okay. When we open up that Edge browser, I wanted everybody to go ahead and sign into office.com. The reason for that is because now we can see, our entire suite of tools right here from the web, directly from the web. I could open up Teams to get the online version if I wanted to. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up SharePoint. Okay. Inside of SharePoint, we're talking about managing documents and how you want to organize those. It seems like a lot of us are currently using SharePoint already for that document storage capability, and so you might have a good understanding. I can just quickly get into it. In this case, right, let's go ahead and take a look at our sales and marketing SharePoint site, for example. This is it's your online document library. That's what SharePoint was primarily meant to be, okay? It's a place where you can come to, you can organize specific documents, you can put relevant information in one location and have it sectioned off for specific tasks. What you'll notice actually, if I go back really quickly, I want to make this point clear, is you'll notice again, the reason that this is tied into Teams. You notice in Teams, all of these are available as specific teams, right? Because now every time we're making edits, we're making changes. For example, I'll just quickly jump into this one. We look to the documents. We were working, if you remember, on our potluck list, right? And if I come here to this potluck list, I can now get access to this specific document again directly from SharePoint. And so this is going to be a really, really effective way for you to manage how you're storing information, how you're getting access to it, how you're organizing it. I think there's more information here inside of, let's see, right here, the sales and marketing. So I just want to show you this one instead. I get questions, right? Number one, should I be using Teams or should I be using SharePoint? I really think it comes down to how you're going to be doing your work. If you're not going to be using Teams, probably a mistake. But if you're not going to be using it, then maybe SharePoint makes more sense because you're already comfortable doing it and that's where you're used to. But like I said, if you're going to be using Teams consistently, if you're going to be really making it a piece of how you get work done, I would highly recommend just doing it through Teams, because not only are you going to have it in Teams, you're also going to have it in SharePoint as well. And more importantly, from my point of view, you're going to have direct access to the information you need right from the same application where you're getting a lot of work done. So, personally, I would recommend doing it in Teams, but you do have the option to do so if you wanted to. Again, we're storing files here in the cloud inside of our SharePoint library. What you'll notice is that I'm going to be able to upload documents here. I can edit them in a grid view if I wanted to, right, to see them in a different way. I'm going to go ahead and exit the grid view. I like it the other way a little bit better. I'm going to be able to sync specific things inside of my SharePoint here to my library, right? So if I wanted to sync my OneDrive, for example, I'm going to go ahead and sync it so that I'm going to be able to get access to my OneDrive here through SharePoint. Okay, so I'm going to sign in. Sorry. So you notice I'll go ahead and press next. And now as I'm syncing this, I'm going to get access to my SharePoint in my OneDrive. It's going to be a super useful tool. I'll show you that a little bit later. I'll also be syncing my OneDrive right here. You notice I just synced it to my account. Very, very effective tool for you. If you're sharing things internally, right, in the organization, you're going to have a variety of ways to do it. I showed you how you can do it here through Teams. You're also going to be able to do this in SharePoint the same way, right? So if I hover over a document and I click on the ellipses, and you got a question.
I do. Anne-Marie wants to know, I thought the Teams SharePoint wasn't connected to our regular SharePoint website.
Okay, so you can have SharePoint sites in your document library that are separate from your Teams. However, if you ever do something in Teams, that is also going to be reflected in SharePoint. Does that make sense? It's like
She's,
go ahead.
she's typing. Let's give her a sec.
Okay. Okay, she says.
Oh, I can answer her. Anne-Marie, let's take that offline, okay? Because you're asking about your company in particular, and we'll need to actually log in together and suss out what's really going on there, okay? But no worries, we'll do it. We'll do it after the workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. I think using SharePoint and Teams effectively though is definitely a very important topic of discussion. So I would absolutely, jump on a call with Ann on that. One question I actually have for the group, I almost forgot to send this out. How are we currently sharing files with people inside or outside of my organization? I'm going to launch this question. Some of us use OneDrive, some of us use SharePoint, some of us do it 100% through email, through Dropbox, Teams maybe, some other function. I'm curious what we're currently doing right now. Reason I'm asking is because we went through the Teams, okay? We've shown you how you can do this through Teams. I'm going to show you a very similar way to do this here through SharePoint. I see we have a few responses that are letting me know that email is a primary way. We want to navigate 100% away from that. That is not going to be our primary goal here when it comes to sharing access. I'll show you how you can do that here through SharePoint. In a very easy structured manner. Similar to Teams, right? Again, this is built over the web, so everything is going to have direct links. It's going to have specific ways to actually share. So if I hover over, let's say this PowerPoint, I can go ahead and click on the ellipses. I can click on the share. And you notice I'm going to have specific settings. As I'm sharing outside of my SharePoint, best practice, if you're sharing from your main repository of information, typically best practice is you don't share that out to somebody outside the organization. If you're going to do it outside of the organization, typically more effective way to do that is through OneDrive. I will show you that as soon as we're done here. But what you'll notice is that inside of my organization, right, I can share this and I can decide, okay, do I want them to be able to edit it? Do I only want specific people in my organization to be able to do this? Do I want anyone with existing access? Or do I just want anybody in my organization with a link to be able to access it, right? I can go ahead and I can apply this, and then I can enter their email to actually send it their way, or I can just copy the link, right? I'm going to go ahead and copy this link, and then I'm going to go back into Teams. I'm going to go to my chat function, and I'm going to go ahead and send that link right here. All right. Again, sending links and getting comfortable doing that is going to be one of the most effective ways to do this effectively. Because of the fact, again, you don't have to worry about downloading documents. Number one, it's not taking up additional space. But on top of that, those links are going to take you right directly to the document. I'm going to be able to collaborate like you're not able to inside of, on-prem file servers, for example. And I'm going to have the ability to do that seamlessly and effectively. Were you going to say something, Ann?
Yeah, and the other thing that's super great about this is you don't have to deal with version control, right? If you're just using a link to the document itself, by definition, it's always the current version of the document.
Great point. And on that point, I also get questions about version history. I forgot to mention that. Again, what you'll notice is that Teams is an extension of SharePoint, but SharePoint has a few more capabilities. For example, one of those things is that you can actually manage the version history, right? So if I click on version history for this document, for example, I'm going to be able to see, from different time zones in terms of different editing. Do I want to see the old version? Maybe there was somebody who made an edit that was not the best edit that I like, and I wanted to go back to that previous version. I do have the capabilities of doing that inside of SharePoint. So, like I said, if we're going to be collaborating internally and we use Teams regularly, I think Teams is probably the best way to do it. But if you're not going to be using Teams, SharePoint is still a phenomenal way to be able to collaborate effectively. Additionally, one other little cool tool that I'll show you is we can also manage access. You remember I was talking about this. Specifically right now, it's available to anybody inside of the team that's tied to the sales and marketing, right? These are the people with existing access. But let's say, for example, for some reason, I wanted to make it so that only one or two people have access to it, or I just wanted to stop sharing it completely, right? This is going to basically make it so that only the people who have direct access to it, are going to be able to access it, right? The people inside of the team. So even if I share this outside of my organization, or if I share this to anybody else inside my organization, they're not going to be able to make any kind of edits. Additionally, if I wanted to make it so that only specifically people with direct access wanted to do this, I could go ahead and grant that. So, when it comes to editing, when it comes to managing versions, when it comes to managing how you're going to be collaborating and working together, again, SharePoint and Teams are going to give you a very, very, I think, improved way of doing this as opposed to doing it through something like email. It's just inefficient. It's not quick. You end up getting a lot of different versions of documents. It's taking up extra storage. We want to maximize productivity. We want to maximize efficiency. And that's why you're going to want to be able to do this through SharePoint, through Teams, through maybe OneDrive. But before I get into OneDrive, Ann or Christian, anything else you wanted to add in there or any other questions from anybody?
So the other thing last point I'll make kind of on using Teams and online files as opposed to email for managing what you're doing that makes it so much better is the persistent chat that goes along with the files that you're sharing and working on together. Since we're using Teams, I don't just put files up and call people out and say, hey, I want you to edit this or I want you to review this, right? Because of the chat feature, I can tell them exactly what I want them to look at in terms of editing or reviewing. And that kind of communication doesn't go away, and it'll, keep track of any direction or change or specific request that anyone on the team has. It can get lost in email when you're collaborating, especially if you're collaborating on a document and it takes you a couple of weeks to get it done. If you do it through Teams, because the chat is persistent, it's easy to find and go back and look at what somebody said a week ago about what you were working on. So that's the other thing that I think is really powerful about using online file sharing and Teams as your collaboration tool set.
Absolutely, and I'll add one other thing there too, Ann. I'm glad you were talking about compliance and different kind of auditing capabilities. I actually got a message from somebody who I was kind of talking about Teams with maybe 6-7 months ago. And they were talking about how they really appreciate that we moved to Teams because what they realize is that they're in the legal field, okay? So they've got a lot of regulatory stuff that they got to deal with. But what they ended up, working through is they realized that when they had to do an audit, a lot of things were, they were doing a lot of communication through the cell phone, right? A lot of their different, workers. And so as they transitioned to communicating through Teams, everything was auditable because you've got a history of all that communication. And so that was a big, real, saver for a lot of them because then they didn't have to worry about trying to get, kind of access to everybody's phone. So there's a lot of, primary reasons why Teams is important, but there's also ancillary reasons why it makes a lot of sense for other organizations as well. So just wanted to point that out. Teams is, it's really, I think, the future of where business is headed. But on that point, right? Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, and then, at the end, if there's time, I see that there are a number of people on the call who are subject to regulatory compliance, and we can talk a little bit about the features that Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, all the tools that we're talking about today, how they work in a compliance scenario.
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about Teams. We talked about how that integrates, and it's an extension of your SharePoint, right? But then I always get questions. Okay, where does OneDrive play into this? How does that, what's the point of that? How can I use that? What's the purpose? Okay, so what I want to do is I kind of just want to walk through OneDrive really quickly and tell you why it's relevant and why you might want to be paying attention to it. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on my Office again because I'm going to want to go ahead and click on my OneDrive. So let me go ahead and open up OneDrive. The primary way that I would recommend somebody would use OneDrive is as a way for you to be able to send and communicate with people outside of your organization. We were talking about, collaborating and sending access to a link where you guys can work with somebody who's not a part of your team, and why sending that out through your main online repository of information is not necessarily a good best practice. I would always recommend best practice, you share things out of your OneDrive as opposed to sharing it out of your SharePoint, okay? So, that's primarily the number one thing I would say OneDrive is meant for. If you're going to be working with somebody outside your organization and you want to give them access to collaborate with you on a document or just so that they can review a document, sharing it through OneDrive is one of the primary ways you can do this. Additionally, if you want to have access to your documents in your OneDrive when you're not necessarily on the web, just on your own computer, you can actually sync it with your own computer. You'll notice right here, I don't have my OneDrive synced right now. Okay, but what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and sync it first. That's the very first thing I'm going to do. You notice there's this button right here. I encourage you guys to click it yourselves. It says sync. The reason this is relevant is I'm going to go ahead and open this. I'm going to allow myself to sign in. Similar to how I synced my SharePoint and my OneDrive together, you'll notice I have these shared libraries available to me. I'm now going to go ahead and start syncing my actual OneDrive with my desktop computer. Because let's say, for example, I don't have access to the web, but I still want to be able to review some of those documents in my OneDrive, make any kind of edits and changes, so that as soon as I get access again to the web, all of those changes are going to automatically sync with the documents that are living inside of my OneDrive. So let's go on ahead and syncing it right now. Not sure why, it's slow, but waiting on it. Okay, let me try it again. The reason I'm doing this, right, is because of the fact that now through my actual file explorer, you'll notice now that I'm synced, I'm going to have direct access to all these documents right here. And like I mentioned, even if you don't have access to the web, because it's synced, the latest version from when you were on the web is going to be available to you directly on your hardware. So you're going to be able to, make those edits, make those changes, and again, once you get access to the internet again, it's going to sync automatically with your OneDrive. So, that's the number one thing. If you want to have access to any documents offline, I think OneDrive is very relevant. Number two, again, we were talking about it, if you want to share documents outside of your organization, that's another really effective way to use this. So let me just show you why this is such a cool tool. So let's say I wanted to share this audit of a small business sales outside my organization. I'm going to click on the share button. Okay, but what's important here is that we want to make sure anyone with the link can edit. But we also want to add additional security tools on top of this, right? So number one, anyone with the link, I'm going to allow them to edit because let's say I want to collaborate on this. Additionally, though, I want to say I only want to give you access for this until this Friday. Okay, so I'm going to have this access to this document, this link basically not work anymore on Friday. Additionally, I'm going to also set a password. So let's just say I'll go, demo password, real simple. Right, I'm going to go ahead and add that. I'm going to apply that password. And I'm going to go ahead and now I can copy that link. Just for practice purposes, I'll go ahead and I'll send this here into the same chat so you guys can try and access it. I encourage you to. But the key here is when you access it, right, they're going to need to go ahead and enter this password. I'm going to, if you remember, it was demo password. I'll show you so you can see. I'll verify this. Oh. Okay, I typed it in, and now after I put the password and I'm an associated person with the link, I can now get access to this, right? We're putting specific things in place so that even if I'm sharing this and it somehow gets into the wrong hands, number one, I've put a date on it. So, even if it's in the wrong hands, it's only going to be working until Friday, number one. And then number two, if it gets into the wrong hands and they don't have the password, they're still not going to be able to get in, right? This is some of those sharing capabilities that are very effective, very extensive here inside of OneDrive that just make this a phenomenal way for you to share and collaborate with people outside of your organization. Any questions on that so far, you guys? And Ann, Christian, if you guys want to add something else in there, please, by all means. Let's take a quick sip.
I think the only thing I would say is that not only is it important to be using the right tools and using the right features of the tools like password protection and limited time access to documents for people, let's say, outside your organization. The other thing that we love doing with our clients is sharing our best practices that go beyond that for how to collaborate and share information safely, especially outside your organization, because that's where people often get in trouble from a security perspective. But we have lots of experience doing it safely, and we're happy to share our best practices on what we recommend.
Appreciate it, and thank you for sharing that. Some other options that you have in here. Oops, forgot to click on that. One of the other things that you can do, right, if I wanted to have the ability to see a version history, you're also going to be able to do that here inside of OneDrive, just like you have here inside of SharePoint, right? It's a very similar functionality in terms of sharing and accessing and collaborating. But again, I think this is the primary way for you to actually be able to actually manage exactly how you collaborate and share things. Additionally, if you ever have a folder, let's say we have a folder here that says AI Hero, I can actually request files to be sent to me from somebody outside the organization. So it has to be a folder. I click on the ellipses. You notice right here where it says request files. I can click on that. I can type a name. So I'll just say test. I'll go ahead and click next, right? And then I can click on this link, right, and say I copy this link, right, and I'm done here. I'll go ahead and send this link into this chat window, let's say. So now let's say, this is one of my colleagues and I want a specific file they've been working on so they can add it to this actual folder. What they're going to be able to do is actually click on this link now and get access to this folder that's where they're going to be able to actually go ahead and drag and drop or upload or add any files that you want to into that folder. So now when they do that, right, I can come in here. And as soon as they add it, I'm going to have it accessible right here inside of the AI Hero. Really cool tool. If you're collaborating and you want help with something and you want to request a specific file, I think that's a really cool tool as well. So as you'll notice, right, there's a lot of variety in terms of things that you can do. You can do this through Teams. You can do this through SharePoint. You can do this through OneDrive. There's different reasons to use each of those different pieces of Microsoft 365. But I think really ultimately the main point that I want to make is that if you're doing a lot of this communication and collaboration through email, you're a step behind. There's much more efficient and effective ways to do this, namely SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive that are just going to make your collaboration, it's going to take your collaboration to the next level. Okay, I just want to make sure that point is hammered down. Any questions on that, you guys? If not, we can jump back into the calling for Teams. Any questions? Okay, no worries. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, I'm going to quickly jump back into our Teams application, is again, why is this holistically an application that you can pretty much run your entire workplace from? Primary reason is you have so much functionality, right? We were talking about the activity for notifications. We were talking about chat for communicating. We've got the file storage capabilities inside of Teams. We have a calendar that's automatically synced with your Outlook so that anytime you have a certain meeting and you wanted to look and get some more information, let's say I want to look at this weekly call, I wanted to be able to have access to it on my calendar, I'm not going to have to jump to Outlook to see what's up next. I can get access to it directly from Teams, right? Again, we're holistically really bringing this entire workspace together through Microsoft Teams. And then ultimately, what I think the cherry on top, as I like to say, is the ability to make outbound calls. This would be taking your Teams environment to a unified communications as a service platform. Creating essentially a workspace where you're going to be able to communicate from a variety of different ways. I can do it through chat. I can do collaboration inside of the files that I'm working on. I can do it through actual outbound calling. Something to understand that's relevant. Teams automatically gives you the ability to do pretty much everything except make outbound calls in the general SKU or the general licensing option that you're choosing. What I mean by that is internal meetings, right, are all going to be exactly the same. So let's say me and Ann and Bonnie are all in the same team. We're still going to be able to do video calls and video chats and calling in that way. It's not going to change that ability. But let's say I wanted to give a call to Andrew. I wanted to call Andrew directly from my Teams environment. I'm not going to be able to make that phone call unless I've integrated voice over IP into my actual Teams environment. I'm going to go ahead and ask another question here of polling inside of the meeting, whether or not we've actually taken this step. Okay, I'm curious, where we stand currently as a group in terms of voice over IP. The reason I wanted to bring this up and really talk about this thoroughly is because of the fact that I think this is a way that a lot of organizations are going to be able to take their team's environment to the next level. Okay, you're paying a certain amount of money for your phone system. You're paying a certain amount of money for your workplace tools. Okay, that's just the bottom line. That's how we're functioning as a business. But the key here is, if we can essentially bring everything together under the same umbrella or the same provider, we're going to be able to dramatically not only reduce costs, but also, effectively collaborate and work together, because we're going to have more options available to us, right? I'll give you an example. This is not, everybody's example, but a little horror story I had at the very beginning of when I started doing these trainings earlier at the beginning of the year, before the pandemic was really what it was. A lot of people had just made investments into phone systems, right, that were tied to hardware. They were on the actual site, and they're good phone systems. I'm not disparaging them in any way, but the problem, if you don't have a voice over IP solution, is that what happens when all of a sudden everybody's working from home? Yeah, we saw this happen right around March. Everything started changing, and so all these people who had just made this big investment didn't have access to their phone system anymore, right? And so that was a huge deal. The thing about Teams is that regardless of whether or not it's the Microsoft Teams calling version or it's a different voice over IP provider, you're going to be able to bring all of that again under one roof. Because now, assuming you turn this feature on, I'm going to be able to have audio conferencing so that people can call into my meetings, and I'm also going to be able to make outbound calls directly from my Teams application. Right? I'll give you an example of what I have typically seen in terms of cost savings and why I recommend you at least take a look. Most of the time when I'm chatting with people and we're talking about what they're spending on workplace, solutions as well as their calling system all together under one cost, typically you'll see it coming down to anywhere between $50 to $70 a user, somewhere in that range. Some are less, some are a little bit more. But my point being, when you have this fully integrated, all together, again, economies of scale under one umbrella inside of Teams, you're looking anywhere from $37 to $39 a user. So, the cost savings overall for the organization can oftentimes be dramatic, number one. But number two, I just think voice over IP, again, is the future, right? Instead of having to have everything tied to a specific hardware, like some type of phone, I'm going to have a soft phone for everything. I'm going to be able to make calls right here from this Teams application. I'm going to be able to make calls from the web when I sign on to my Teams and make the call there. I'm going to be able to make calls from my Teams application on my phone, right? I'm going to be able to do all of that from anywhere I have access to Teams. And so the flexibility is, I think, what makes it the most attractive for me when I'm talking to this with customers, because now I have an idea, I have a solution that I can target that's going to make my communication as an organization, 3, 5 times better and more cheaper and more effective. So I just wanted to share that with you. I want to touch on that. And Ann, please feel free to add anything that you think I missed, because I just think this is something, a easy first step when it comes to Teams that I think people are missing that would make their life a lot easier. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Any questions on that, you guys? I usually get a lot of questions on voice over IP and kind of how it works.
It's okay if you don't have questions, because we're throwing a lot at you today.
Yeah.
And voice over IP and Teams is probably a step that's further down the road for folks who don't have much or any of this infrastructure in place. Oh, I just got a question. Can it integrate with a desk phone?
Yes. It can, Andrew. There's specific Microsoft products. I'm sure they're trying to make money there too. But if you already have certain hardware, you should definitely be able to integrate it together. I just personally like the soft phone because then I can make calls from like my phone and everything. But yeah, you can tie it to a desk phone if you wanted to.
And since we have a little bit of time, oh, Andrew's typing again. Okay.
He said, yeah, perfect.
I was hoping, Christian, that you could spend just a couple of minutes talking about the security and compliance features of the tool set that we've been talking about today, because I know that that's incredibly relevant for all the participants today.
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, you're good.
Excellent. Yes, so when we look at kind of the security and compliance around Office 365 and Azure in general, we like to we like to start by tying everything into one identity, right? That's really important to us. We see, having a singular identity that you log into your Office, Office 365, and then also out to other applications that you might use, SaaS applications. So you end up with one consistent identity. That's kind of the starting point for security. And when we look at the Office ecosystem, especially around Teams and SharePoint, what's really nice about the compliance that Microsoft gives is, again, because it's under one platform. If you have regulatory compliance, like let's say some kind of retention requirement, you must keep files for X amount of time. You can create a single kind of compliance requirement at the root, and it can flow down to SharePoint, to Teams, to email. So if you put something on litigation hold, or you put something, you have retention requirements for documents, whether it's all documents or certain documents in certain document libraries, you can kind of set those, and it flows through all of the elements of Office 365, from email to files to chats, actual Teams chats or files shared within the Teams channel. So again, not that other kind of point solutions can't do that, right? But you have to manage those, in multiple places. So we see just an ease of settings, whether it's DLP, data loss prevention settings, whether it's retention settings, any of those more compliance-y type requirements are just easier to handle under one ecosystem. So we like that a lot.
Christian, we were having a conversation about, like you say, if we're splitting this up into 3 different tools, like you were talking about, let's say we have Box, we have Zoom, and we have Slack, and that's how we do our work. Can you talk a little bit about the security differences between the basic versions of those versus what you're getting here inside of Microsoft 365? I thought that was a pretty cool conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at, multiple tools versus one system like Office 365, the kind of the base prices that you get for Slack or Box don't include a lot of the security type of features that you need when you're talking about whether it's a larger business or whether you have compliance requirements. So normally when you kind of do an assessment of, again, let's say we said Slack for Teams, Box for SharePoint, Zoom for Teams for Voice, and other tools like that, you're ending up paying for the higher level versions of each one of those tools. So rather than each of those costing somewhere between $5 and $8, you really have to kick it up to the $15 to $20 versions of each one of those tools. And again, Office 365, with all of this compliance built into it, is about a $20 SKU for Office 365 E3. There's other add-ons and SKUs that you might want for security and enhancements, but the core suite comes with all of that compliance and security that typically you have to pay a lot more for. So you can end up paying easily 3x, 4x when you look at tools, kind of point solutions for all these tools versus the integrated solution from Microsoft.
It's actually kind of funny. I was talking about this as well with another customer yesterday or earlier today. And I was talking to them, I was like, I'll tell you how important this is and how relevant this is. Let me just explain it this way. Slack was suing Microsoft for including Teams inside of their actual M365 SKU because there's just so much for what you're getting, right? It's a competitive advantage in terms of everything you're able to access through the Office 365, Microsoft 365, abilities and services. So just keep that in mind. I mean, that's what we're dealing with, right? I mean, that's how expansive this suite of tools is, and that's why I'm so bullish about the different capabilities that you have available to you. So that was a cool little nugget of information. We have a few minutes here. I can quickly touch on some meeting features. I think that's always a cool discussion to have. We went over a couple of them earlier at the very beginning of the session, but let me just go ahead and share my screen so you can see what different things you're able to do here inside of the meetings. Number one, if you click on the participant section, you're going to be able to get a list of everybody who's actually on the call. As somebody in the meeting, you can actually decide whether or not you wanted to mute them or you wanted to spotlight them, like when they're speaking. So for example, I could spotlight myself so that I become the center of attention, right? So if somebody's speaking during the call and you wanted to highlight them, spotlighting them is a great way to go ahead and do that so that we can bring attention to whoever's speaking. But additionally, like I mentioned, what's relevant, you ever been on a meeting and all of a sudden you hear a lot of background noise from somebody who doesn't realize they have a bunch of noise? When you come in here, click on their name, and then I can go ahead and mute them if I wanted to. So, that's the primary purpose of this participant section. Additionally, you can actually call people directly into the meeting right here by dialing their number or putting their name if they're in your environment. And additionally, I think last thing I will say, these interlocking circles are going to give you access to join info. So I'll copy this and then I'll send this into the chat window. You'll see if anyone's ever having access joining the meeting, I always recommend just email them that join info so that they have the link to join the meeting, they have the call-in information, and everything they need to get access to that specific meeting. Okay, so that's the participant section. We went over the chat, right? This is where you can send messages during the meeting, relatively simple. But they also have these little cool features now, right? The raise your hand. Great way to get my attention. These are coming out. They're coming out with a little laugh emoji as well, the applause, a heart, a thumbs up. These are all cool little tools. They're rolling them out, over time. These are coming up pretty soon. One of my favorite additions that they just did though was the polling feature. Right, we were demoing this today, and the reason I think it's super cool is because it gives us an idea to really start asking questions from the group, keep people engaged, and understand how we can work together and get the information that's relevant for the call. I think this is a phenomenal way, number one, to really make sure you understand who you're speaking to, what their needs are, but also again, you want to keep people engaged. We're talking through an extended period of time. I appreciate everybody's time today. I know, it's easy to get distracted. So I think polling is a fun way to bring people back in. And it's definitely a cool tool here that they just added inside of virtual meetings. You'll notice you have the camera, obviously. I can turn it on, I can turn it off. I've got the sharing capabilities that I've been using all day today. But some of the cool functions, right? Let's look over some of the cool things we can do. Let me go ahead and more actions. Ooh. What is going on here? Okay. Oh, you know what it is? I am not the owner of the meeting, so I think I'm not going to be able to make changes, but that's all right. One of the things that you're able to do here, Bonnie, if you're there, I'd love to just show the together mode. I think that would be a really fun thing for everybody here. It's one of the new features here inside of Teams meetings that they're doing specifically to try and make it a little more fun for everybody who's joining calls. I mean, we're on virtual calls 24/7 all the time. And so, finding a way to bring people together inside this together mode, you might have seen it if you saw the NBA Finals, right? You had people on the screens with their faces. That together mode, essentially, if you've got everybody on video, right? We can make it so that we have all those structured together where we can see one another. We look like we're sitting at a table. We're sitting at, in types of seating. It's just a really fun tool. I think bring some energy to your meetings is important. Additionally, right, you notice I have a background. So I'm going to be able to manage that as well. So anytime I'm making changes to my background, I'm going to be able to manage, what kind of background I have, what type of background I like. They actually just made it so that you can actually add additional images to your background. So if you wanted to put your own image in the back, maybe with your logo for your company or whatever it is, you can do that as well. And then finally, what I think is, important for everybody to understand is we can obviously record. Anytime we have a meeting, we need to take down the actual video. We can record it. We can add captions to it during the meeting and get captions after as well. AI is built into everything that Microsoft does. So what you'll notice is that oftentimes you're going to have the ability to do a lot of things that are structured, very easily, specifically because they're leveraging artificial intelligence, right? They're capturing what I'm saying, right? And then they can go ahead and put live captions on the meeting if you wanted to. Really, really, really cool tool here inside of virtual meetings. So what I will say, what I'll leave you with here is that, don't stop paying attention. Because let me give you a little bit of context here. before the pandemic started, Teams was already starting to gain popularity, but we were in the 20 to 25 million a day active users. That was the standard. We were getting anywhere between 20 to 25 million daily active users. We today are currently sitting over 100 million daily active users of Teams. I mean, it's like 5x growth in 1 year. Absolutely crazy. So, my point being, the investment that Microsoft is making for Teams and for the entire M365 suite is substantial. They're going to be continually improving this, continually making changes. And, I think really personally, that's really one of the main purposes why working with somebody that's so experienced at things like this, like Xantrion, can really help you understand where you currently stand with your current modern workplace, what steps you can take to try and elevate your efficiency, your collaborative capabilities, and your effectiveness as an organization. For you guys coming to the lab, taking the time, we're actually offering a free modern workplace readiness assessment. If you'd like for us to go ahead and take a look at where you currently stand right now when it comes to your specific workspace, we'd love to meet with you, walk through different tools and evaluate how we think we can make your specific workspace more effective, more efficient, and more valuable for how you conduct business. Ultimately, I think it's all about getting better every day, staying on top of the changes inside of the industry, and understanding that partnering with the right people is really going to elevate me to where I want to go to. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it back to Anne. I think she does a great job bringing everything home. I know I've been speaking a lot today, you guys, but it's been an absolute pleasure being able to walk you guys through some of these tools here inside the Microsoft 365 suite. So Anne?
I just want to second Andreas in saying thank you for your time and your attention. I know these are long, but we're hoping that this demonstration format really allows people to truly wrap their head around how these new tools work, how they might be different from what they're doing. So obviously, if you have additional questions, I know in a group format sometimes it's really challenging for people to raise their hand. So I want to offer my time, and I'll put my email address in the meeting chat so everyone has it. You can just reach out to me offline, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. The other thing that I want to offer is this assessment that Andreas was talking about, because as you can see, there's a lot to these new tools, and there's a lot to how you might use them in your organization. So in order for me or someone like me to really help you do a good job with deciding whether these tools are for you, and if so, under what circumstances, and kind of key use cases for how you might use them within your organization, it really requires a more detailed conversation where we talk about how your business operates in order for us and you to understand under what circumstances these tools will work best for you. So I really encourage you to take us up on that readiness assessment, and let me finish typing in my email address in case anybody has questions and they want to talk offline. And obviously, Anne-Marie, I already know you, so we will talk offline to get your question answered about how your SharePoint is set up specifically within your organization. And I'm just going to, give it a couple minutes to let people kind of let this sink in and think about where they are and what they want to do before we wrap it up, because I know it's been a lot.
Yes, it's definitely been a lot. Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. I'm glad you're able to make it.
Yeah. All right. So with that, I think we might want to wrap it up. And obviously, feel free to email or even chat me before you leave the meeting. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Andres.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Hope you have a great week. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Hope everybody does all right.